are going to do a full comparison between the iPhone X versus the Samsung Galaxy S9. Now the Galaxy S9 was released in March 2018 while the iPhone X in November 2017. So there's an approximate 4-month gap between the two smartphones. As you know, Apple and Samsung dominate the smartphone market and they are the biggest rivals. As such, people quickly ask questions. Questions such as, is the iPhone X better than the Galaxy S9? Or is the Galaxy S9 better than the iPhone X? And of course, the most popular question of all, just tell me which one is better. And of course, that's exactly what I'm going to do in this video. We are going to do a full side-by-side comparison of every aspect of the smartphone. So let's dive in and discover the winner. Before we dive in, make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at SakiTechOnline. So the first thing I want to take a look at is the build and design. So both the iPhone X and the S9 have a similar build quality. Front and back, you will find glass on both smartphones with a solid metal band around the edges. This makes for a high-end build, and therefore both smartphones feel like $1 million when you hold them in your hands. The glass build makes both smartphones slippery, so be sure to protect them with some sort of grippy case. Now when you move on to the design is where things differ. They both have massive frontal displays and they both look gorgeous. S9 has a large and tall display that dominates the screen, leaving tiny bezels on the top and bottom, while the iPhone X strives to fill the entire front with a screen, almost succeeding except for that tiny notch on the front. You will observe that the bezels on the side of the S9 are actually thinner and it sports the signature dual curved edge design. All in all, I must say that the design is a subjective choice, but in my opinion, S9 still seems to pull ahead slightly. It seems more clean in overall presentation from the front. This slight lead could possibly have been avoided if the iPhone X had somehow eliminated that notch on the top, which does serve a major function known as the Face ID, which we will talk about later. Now both smartphones come with water resistance, but the S9 once again gains a slight lead with a higher IP68 rating as opposed to the iPhone X's IP67 rating. Rest assured, however, both phones can easily handle a rainy day or an accidental drop into a puddle of water. Both smartphones also sport Bluetooth 5.0, which is the latest standard in Bluetooth, which is going to allow for better quality audio and also for longer Bluetooth range. That's all good stuff. Now both phones also come with dual stereo speakers. One speaker is at the bottom and the other one is on top, built into the earpiece. Both speakers sound fantastic, but the S9 once again takes a lead here because it retains the 3.5mm headphone jack while the iPhone X does away with it. So to summarize, S9 certainly has a lead in this category. It does have higher water resistance rating, a cleaner look overall, and the retention of the 3.5mm headphone jack. But as for the actual build quality, they're both well made. Now let's move on to the processor, memory, and storage. The iPhone X sports a powerful hexa-core A11 processor with 3GB of RAM and can be acquired with 64GB of storage for the base model, or you can buy the 256GB storage option. The Galaxy S9 also sports a powerful octa-core Snapdragon 845 CPU or an Exynos 9810 variant in non-US markets with 4GB of RAM. S9 will be available in a 64GB storage option, but you can easily add up to 400GB of extra storage using a micro SD card, a feature that the iPhone X lacks. Adding extra storage to the S9 is much cheaper. You can get a 128GB micro SD card for around $50 and just load up on photos, videos, and any media if desired. With the iPhone X, the jump from 64GB version to 256GB version of the iPhone X will cost you $150. Now, if we move on to the benchmarks, it is immediately clear that the iPhone X has more processing power. Obviously, the Galaxy S9 is not a slow phone by any means, but iPhone's A11 Bionic chip produces more power, which will possibly translate into greater looking buttery smooth games. So the iPhone takes the win in total processing power. However, the S9 counters with the availability of the micro SD card. This category is a draw. Now let's talk about the dimensions. So as you can see, they're approximately the same size overall. This is not a big deal, but I wanted to show it to you guys anyway. They both offer great one-handed usability. Now let's talk about something much more important, the display. The iPhone X has a 5.8-inch AMOLED display with a resolution of 1125 by 2436 with 456 pixels per inches. The S9 also has a 5.8-inch Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 1440 by 2960 with 579 pixels per inches. And of course, both of these smartphones offer HDR-enabled displays. Both of these smartphones have fantastic displays that look stunning from every angle. They're not dull, they're very vibrant. The S9 is sharp and clear and is slightly more saturated. The iPhone X is also sharp and clear, but with better color accuracy as opposed to saturation. Overall, I cannot recommend one over the other as they both look very clean and crispy. I will consider this category a draw. Top-notch, high-quality displays either way. It's really hard for me to say to buy one over the other based on the display quality. So let's move on and talk about the software, also a very important category. Let's start with the basics. The Galaxy S9 runs on the latest version of Android while the iPhone X runs on the latest version of iOS. When comparing iOS and Android, it is hard not to overlook two big differences. Number one is customization. Android's system is a much more open-ended environment and allows for extensive customization via widgets, themes, and home screen tweaking. You can tweak an Android smartphone to fit your personal sense of style. iOS, on the other hand, when it comes to home screens, is just a static grid of app icons with very basic customization capabilities such as being able to change the wallpaper. On the other hand, iOS does offer more polished apps and a greater gaming experience. Just about every game on the iPhone X, including graphically demanding games, will run at maximum performance with smooth and lag-free gameplay, a feat Galaxy S9 won't be able to match. Not because it isn't capable, but simply because iOS apps are given more quality control before production. Additionally, the Apple App Store does yield a larger number of quality apps as opposed to the Google Play Store. So if you care about apps and games and how well they perform, this is certainly something to pay very close attention to, especially for app-driven people who prefer simplicity of use over customization and personalization. Beyond those two differences, S9 is certainly more productive and feature-rich in the software department. It allows for split-screen multitasking, which means you can run two windows side by side at the same time. I am not sure if the iPhone will ever get split-screen multitasking, even though the iPad does have it. The S9 also has the Edge functionality. You can swipe inwards from the edges of the display to bring up the Edge panels. These Edge panels can give you access to app shortcuts, weather widgets, tools such as a compass or a digital ruler, a calculator, and much more. On top of that, it is fully customizable. You can actually add or remove a bunch of panels based on your needs. iPhone X also has some software capabilities such as 3D Touch, which is a pressure-sensitive screen that allows you to access quick actions and other gestures by pressing down on the screen with a certain amount of pressure. Not a bad feature, but rarely used. So it is clear from everything I mentioned that the Galaxy S9 is more customizable, feature-rich, and productive overall. However, where Apple wins is the app ecosystem, which is not a joke. Like I said, the Apple App Store will offer superb games and provide more polished and quality apps in comparison to the Google Play Store. For app-driven people, this might be important enough to stick with Apple. Now let's move on and talk about the camera. So let's take a look at the specs. iPhone has a dual camera system, while the Galaxy S9 has a single camera system. Let's look at the iPhone X first. It has a 12 megapixel primary wide-angle camera with an aperture of f1.7. The secondary camera is a 12 megapixel with an aperture of f2.4. The S9 also has a primary 12 megapixel camera that comes with a dual aperture of f1.5 and f2.4. Now both the primary cameras are quite capable. They take stunning daytime shots and produce a clear and sharp image. Now because the S9 Plus can make use of the small f1.5 aperture, at nighttime it takes slightly better nighttime photography, but the difference is not too mind-bending. Now the secondary telephoto camera on the iPhone X is designed especially for 2x optical zoom and being able to take nice portrait photos that will keep your face in sharp focus while blurring the background to create the bokeh effect. Now when we move on to the video recording, both the iPhone X and S9 are capable of some amazing things. They can record at 1080p at 30 or 60 frames per second easily, and can also record in 4K at 30 or 60 frames per second, which is awesome. However, the S9 takes a major lead in slow motion recording. It can now record at 960 frames per second slow motion speeds as opposed to the iPhone X's 240 frames per second. This super slow motion allows you to capture some really incredible moments if you are into this kind of videography. As for the front camera, both smartphones are great and get the job done of taking selfies and video conferencing. So in this category, we have a bit of a draw. The iPhone X leads with the dual camera, but S9 counters with dual aperture and super slow motion capabilities. However, for an average consumer that mostly takes photos and straight videos, both phones offer a very attractive package that will not disappoint and will offer sharp and clear photos in varying lighting conditions. So let's move on to the battery. Both phones are able to last a full day with a full charge with medium to heavy use, which is a healthy combination of browsing the web, listening to music, watching a few hours of video, and using apps. Now, both the iPhone X and the S9 offer wireless charging using the same Qi standard, which is fantastic. Both phones also offer fast wired charging. However, S9 has fast wired charging right out of the box with the included charging adapter, while the iPhone X will require you to purchase the fast charging compatible wall adapter if you wish to utilize the fast charging option, which means you will have to spend some extra money with the iPhone X if you want to utilize the fast charging option. So again, the S9 takes a lead here in this category as it comes with a fast charging adapter right out of the box. Now let's talk about biometrics and security options. In this category, the S9 leads in overall tech. It has 3 ways to unlock your smartphone: a fingerprint sensor, an iris scanner, and a basic facial recognition tool. The iPhone X only has 1 way to unlock your smartphone, the Face ID, which replaces the fingerprint sensor known as the Touch ID. Now, the Face ID on the iPhone X is far superior to the facial recognition tool found on the S9. Even Samsung doesn't recommend using the facial tool on the S9 as a reliable security measure, so we could potentially discard that option on the S9 if used all by itself. So what we really have is an iPhone X with a state-of-the-art Face ID system versus the S9 with a state-of-the-art iris recognition tool plus the proven fingerprint sensor. There's one more trick that the S9 has. It does allow you to combine the iris scanner and the facial tool to create what is known as the intelligent scan. But you have to be very careful because it has been noted that the intelligent scan, because it uses the less reliable facial scan as part of its unlocking, will not be as reliable as using the iris scanner all by itself. The primary function of the intelligent scan is to make sure unlocking your phone is faster in bright light or total darkness, but it does sacrifice a little bit of security. So I do recommend using the iris scanner if you want complete security. But the bottom line is the S9 has more options on the table, so the win goes to the S9 in this category for having more tech. Now let's talk about pricing, and then we will tie it all in a conclusion. So the S9 has an official price of $720 for the 64GB model, and the iPhone X starts at $1,000 for the 64GB model. You can also get the 256GB iPhone model for $1,150. It is clear that the price advantage lies with the S9. There is a $280 price difference. And finally, it is time for us to define the winner in this battle. So let's move on to the conclusion. Alright, so it is clear that both smartphones are technological marvels in the premium segment. As a tech package, they both offer a lot of value. They both offer top-level displays and very impressive cameras. However, the S9 either appears to meet or exceed the iPhone X at just about every category, and it still manages to be less expensive. Let's briefly list the advantages of the S9. A higher water resistance rating of IP68, still retains the headphone jack despite having stereo speakers, and in my opinion has a better design and offers more biometric security options. On the other hand, the only technological advantage that the iPhone X seems to have is its higher processing power and the availability of a secondary telephoto camera. Even when you look at wireless charging, while both smartphones provide it, the S9's wireless charging speeds are slightly faster than the iPhone X. And of course, no doubt, software and ecosystem will play a major role in deciding between the two. For instance, if you are fully invested in the Apple ecosystem, such as if you own many Apple products from a MacBook to an iPad to an Apple TV or the HomePod, you will benefit by buying the iPhone X, and I would highly recommend that you do buy the iPhone X over the S9 for ecosystem benefits. However, if you are simply in the market for a rock-solid premium smartphone and have no deep ecosystem investments, it is natural for me to recommend buying the S9 over the iPhone X. Like I said, it meets or exceeds the iPhone X in just about every category and still comes with a lower price. And that is the ultimate conclusion. So if you ask me right now, which one should I buy or which one is better, the answer is S9.